Let's see. I moved from Brooklyn to Staten Island. Staten Island. Got to say it right. Staten Island.
New Yorker.
Oh, yeah. New Yorker. And that was 1975. And I moved to this neighborhood where all these kids my age, and we all had these older brothers and sisters, just a few years older. And they were just at the age where they were buying albums, and the parents. Every time I would go over any of my friends' houses on this new block that I just moved on to, there would just be records laying everywhere, just vinyl. And that was my introduction to music. I would just see this big square of art on the floor. I'm like, what is this? And it'd be some Elton John album with weird characters and stuff. Wow, what is that? Or whatever it was. So we would always just go up to the bedroom, where there was always a little turntable, and we just sit on the bed, drop the needle, and just stare at the speakers and just listen. And Beatles and all kinds of stuff. And then there was this one album I looked at, and it had this weird creatures. They looked like spacemen or monsters. I don't know what they were. They had painted faces. I'm like, what is this? And we put it on. And you hear this crowd start to cheer. And you hear Paul Stanley, how do y'all feel? It was Kiss Alive. And it had just come out. And as soon as I heard that, that did it. Immediately, it was like, before that, I wanted to be a fireman and a this and a that and an astronaut and everything a little kid wants to be. But as soon as I heard that album, I don't know what subliminal messages they stuck in there, because this happened to a lot of people. You hear that album and suddenly it's like, that's what I want to do. And at 5 years old, turning 6, I was like, okay, I know what I want to do with my life. Now to get started.
That's amazing. You're not the first person to say that, not to interrupt you. We've had multiple guests on the show that have
I have to ask
Kiss.
him, though. This is so important because there's a 45-minute mashup of Paul Stanleyisms online. Have you heard this? Where it's just like, Boston, we love you, and it's hotter than hell in here. Have you ever listened to Paul Stanley just take out all the Kiss music, all Black Diamond, all gone, and just Paul Stanley? Have you just devoted your life to that at some point?
I have. Yes, absolutely. I heard that.
Best frontman or greatest frontman?
The David Lee Roth one too. Did you hear that one with all the different Rothisms?
It just depends on what year, because if you go back to the 70s, it's about banging your girlfriend, but if you go back to like 2015, it's his dogs running through the field. So it depends on what David Lee Roth era of you're talking about of banter.
70s.
So what was it about?
Challenge.
I just wanted to ask, as someone who didn't really grow up listening to Kiss, obviously I was familiar with who they were at the time as a kid, but what was it about the music that caught you? Was it the vocals? Was it the guitars? Like, I'm just curious what it is that hit so many people to inspire them that strongly to want to do that.
It was a combination of things. It was the personas. They were such interesting personas, and that appealed to a young kid, because they were like superheroes in a way. So there was that. The music was easily digestible. Although at that time, there were a lot of Yes albums that I listened to at that age too, which I loved. Like hearing Fragile for the first time as a kid. Maybe it's not even that. But
it's hilarious because we just talked to Doug Pinnick and he said the same thing, Kiss. And then he said he heard Chris Squire and it changed his idea about being able to groove in odd time signatures, and it like opened, that was like the acid for him. Like Kiss was the weed, the opening up drug, and then Yes was just like, oh wow, this is the Matrix.
Totally. So it was a lot of that. Like when you grew up in the 70s, you were just constantly, every week, there would be something incredible that is released. And there was no way to avoid loving music, no matter what it was. Every kind of music. It was at its pinnacle. It was at its best. It was, whether it was the funk, whether it was the punk, whether it was, the classic rock stuff, everything, even the disco. Young me never would have thought old me would be defending disco, because at that time it was rock versus disco and it was the big war. But it was amazing. Everything was incredible that you heard that came out. It was the best of the best in every way. Yeah, I listened to tons of everything from Blondie to Billy Joel and Boston to The Who to Led Zeppelin to AC/DC to Priest to Pink Floyd to Queen. And just imagine, hey, new album from Queen is out. And you hear this amazing stuff that's for the first time. Oh, Pink Floyd is putting out this concept album called The Wall. And I remember the commercials for it. And I would just hear the, all in all, you're just... And I would be wondering how the rest of the song went. And I would try and make it up in my head. I would hear it go from the, F, 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 E, D, C, and then it would like fade off. I'd be like, where does it go from there? So I eventually heard it, but it was just such incredible stuff. So no matter what, you were going to be inspired and influenced by music so much that you felt like you had to pay it back to the world, like what the world just gave you. Yeah. So for a lot of young little kids, it was Kiss because they were the superheroes. They were the monsters. They were those things. And the music was pretty cool. It was. It was good rock and roll. You had Ace, who had that, you know, from a guitarist standpoint, just that slow, sleazy kind of feel to it. Paul Stanley, the riffs were very Stonesy, which you could even go farther back and say it was, you know, 50s inspired. And there was so many different personas in the music as well, so many identities. You had Paul Stanley that was kind of soulful, and then you had Gene that's just like, oh, you know, just testosterone. Sounds like some kind of pasta. You know? Hey, Mom, make me some testosterone. I'm going to go work out. Yeah.
Gene Simmons, like, I've already trademarked that, Ron, so please send me my money. Okay.